This is Teahupoo, and this is Vahine Surfing Teahupoo. I'm going to analyze fantasy picks and answer the question, can the wildcards win the Shiseido Tahiti Pro? I spent hours watching Teahupoo videos and conducting interviews to find out what it takes to win in Tahiti. Let's first take a look at the wave at Teahupoo. We won't be seeing any sleepy cutbacks here. It's all about the barrel, 75 yards of hero slab over a sharp coral reef. Let Kelly show you how to claim a 9.57, and Nathan Hedge get a wild 10. And John making it look way too easy. That's from 2014, and how much do we want to repeat a big pumping Teahupoo? This, you may recall, is when the quote-unquote greatest heat of all time took place. Kelly versus John in the semis, as good as it gets, with a tiebreaker decision. Kelly took the win. The final often gets overshadowed by the semifinals heat, but Gabriel Medina put on a championship clinic, winning that year, and Kelly nearly pulled it out in the end. Kelly got 14 nines and 2 10s in that event, and fun fact, he once got a perfect 20 at the end of the road. Let's do a slow-mo of Teahupoo and let Rue Hill walk us through it. By the way, his full interview link is in the description and in the upper right.
It was all about being in the right spot because that wave stands up so quickly out of nothing. So as you take off on that wave and you're looking down the line, you're looking at essentially a big closeout coming towards you. And when you've got a wave that's bending as much as that, it's shocking how much you need to point your board down the wave into the trough, almost as if you're straightening out. But because the wave bends towards you, the exit comes towards you, and naturally that makes the barrel wider too. And when you see people kick off the back, if they keep going, don't kick out, they're not going into nice, flat, calm water where the boat is sitting. You're going into an even heavier wave than the one you just surfed that's kind of folding over a completely dry reef.
Now here's what we don't want. Small Teahupoo up on the reef. When Gabriel Medina needs to do an air and then avoid the shelf, we know we didn't score in Tahiti. When choosing your fantasy team, consider the surf first and then who has the skills to match those conditions. As I put this video together, a series of good swells are forecasted ahead of the Tahiti Pro waiting period, and the pulses are providing warm-up sessions for CT competitors and Olympians alike. Instagram clips are sure to follow.
Here's the long-range forecast showing the start of the waiting period, which looks promising. These long-range forecasts are rough estimates, and surf conditions will be more clearly defined as we approach the waiting period. I will have surf forecast information on my website at oldsurfdad.com and frequent updates on my Instagram at oldsurfdad. Remember, the WSL has had several events this year run on the final day of the waiting period. They straight up scored on the last day at Margaret River recently. Let's hope the South Pacific pulses continue and the pros get some epic waves. By the way, this video is sponsored by CARVE.SURF, where you can get minimalistic, fine art matte prints for your home or office, and Teahupoo has just been added. I'm giving away one of these prints to the first person that can identify the break with a sailboat on the top of the homepage. Check it out at CARVE.SURF and tell me your answer in the comments below. Post-cut, there are new rules for fantasy regarding picks. The most important one is that you need to have your picks in before the event starts. Now that there are less surfers, 24 men and 12 women, here's how it works. In the opening round of the men's, there will be 8 heats of 3 surfers, and only the winner of the 3-man heat moves on to the bracket round of 16. For example, in Heat 5 from last year's El Salvador event, Connor O'Leary won the heat with a 13.4, so he moved directly into the bracket round. The other 2 will be relegated to an elimination heat. The winner of the elimination heat moves on to the bracket round, and the loser is out. In our last example, both Jack Robinson and Rio Aida, who lost to Connor, were reseeded into the elimination round based on ranking. Jack lost his elimination round heat and is out. Rio, on the other hand, won his head-to-head heat with John and made it into the bracket round. You definitely don't want that losing surfer on your team because you'll get 0 points for your pick. Imagine you make a solid selection like Jack Robinson or John Florence
and end up with a goose egg. Dang. It's the same format for the women, but with only 12 surfers, the stakes are higher. For the women, after their elimination round, it's straight into the quarters. Just like in pre-cut fantasy, there are still double points for power surfers. Progressive scoring is in effect as well. That's where each event is worth incrementally more points using a multiplier, and the multiplier is now up to 1.5. That means Tahiti is worth 1.5 times more than the first event at Pipeline, and El Salvador will be worth 1.6 times more. If that isn't too nerdy, then try this on. Remember when I talked about the winner of the opening round heat moving on to the bracket round? Well, it's not fair that those winners don't get points in the elimination round. So here's the rule from the fantasy page. After the midseason cut, surfers who win their opening round heat and bypass the elimination round will receive the highest point total of the elimination round for their heat score. If all that is confusing, just make sure you get your picks in before the event starts and you'll be good to go. Now for all the fantasy stats you'll ever need, go to the Old Surf Dad fantasy page, link in the description, where you'll see past winners, power rankings, and more. Thanks to our in-house statistician, DYL, I've added new stats which combines power ranking and momentum calculations for the 2024 season. We're calling it Super Power Rankings. Check it out on the site now. I'll cover fantasy stats highlights as we look at the picks, but I encourage you to take advantage of that resource. Now, before we get into the fantasy picks preview, I want to announce that T-Bone and I will be making our picks together for the rest of the season in a series of live shows. The Tahiti live show will be on Sunday, May 19th at 1:30 p.m. PST or Los Angeles time. Join the conversation with us in the chat. It's a damn good time, and there'll be trivia questions with prizes. And yes, I forgot to do a trivia question in the last show, so there'll be 2 of them in this upcoming show. Now, I know some of you can't make the live show, and that's cool. There'll be a rebroadcast on YouTube, and now you can also hear it from the comfort of your own car as a podcast. We're calling it The Current Surf Show, and you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the podcast places. By the way, for my previews, I'm bringing back the Fantasy Radar, where I select a top pick, a dark horse, a coming in hot, and a hard pass, and more. All right, so let's do this and look at the tiers. Starting in women's tier A is Katie Simmers wearing the yellow jersey. In her first year at Teahupoo, Katie blew through the field, defeating Molly and Vahine on her way to the finals, where she lost to Caroline in challenging waves. She was 4th in the Tahiti power rankings, and that's based on only using 1 year of stats because last year was her first CT comp there. Those above her had 2 years counted. Everyone talks about how she looks like she's free surfing in the heat, and that's because I believe she is. I just saw her featured in Surfline's latest Maps to Nowhere, and Katie's display of tube riding was mind-blowing. I think a heat and a free surf don't make a difference to her. She doesn't seem to care and goes for it. I think that makes it really fun to watch. Let's make Katie Simmers my top pick. Joanne seems the underdog in bigger barreling surf, but she can do that. She'll have a better opportunity, though, if Teahupoo is about turns. Joanne will use the skills she honed in Reunion Island, as seen here. By the way, put that place on your bucket list. It's insane. I should also mention that her being French will give her a home field advantage, and locals will be cheering for her. Now for Molly. I can't stop thinking about her 10 at the Pipe Pro, and if you believe those skills can be used at Teahupoo, then she's a favorite to win the event. Remember, she lost last season in her first CT Tahiti event to Katie Simmers in the quarters. A Katie-Molly heat would be a great finals. Imagine those two in a pipe rematch with pumping chopes. In Tier B, we've got to make 2 choices out of a talented group of women. I'll talk about them starting with what I consider the top 3 in no particular order. First is Brisa Hennessy. Brisa missed last year's Tahiti event with an injury, but in 2022 was runner-up in the finals to Courtney Conalog. And yes, she has the backside tube riding thing down. She showed up early this season to get a tattoo from the reef and warm up ahead of most of her competitors. I've noticed a correlation to those that show up early and do the work end up getting results. She's going to be my coming in hot pick. Next is a current world champ and last year's Tahiti winner, Carolyn Marks. Hard not to select the goofy foot for your fantasy team, considering she's number 1 in my power rankings. I'll make her my women's nerd stat pick. Rounding out my top 3 in women's Tier B is the other goofy footer, Tatiana Weston-Webb. She's number 2 in my power rankings and made an appearance in the semis in 2022, but this hasn't been the best year in her career. I'm going to make her my dark horse pick because I don't think anyone's expecting her to do well. All 3 of these women can ride the tube and go to turns. Solid conservative picks. You're probably surprised I didn't put Betty Lou in the top 3 list, but she's never competed in a CT at Teahupoo, and I think experience with a ledge counts even if you have a good understanding of pipeline. Plus, most of her waves in the Pipe Pro event were at backdoor. Still, she knows how to ride the tube going left. Tyler went out in the elimination round in 2022, but was 3rd place making the semis last year. I'm mixed on her. Is she going to be fired up like she was in Margaret River, or come out flat like she did at Bells? She can win this event in the right conditions. Last event's winner, Gabrielle Bryan, has struggled at Teahupoo, losing the last 2 years in the elimination round, but has a renewed confidence with her Margaret River win. I'm a big fan of hers, as I talked about in my Margaret River preview, but I think she's better in rights, and if I have to choose someone for a hard pass, it's going to be Gabriella. Dang. Tier C is where it gets interesting. Notice I didn't pick Sawyer for my hard pass. She made the cut by staying in the moment and winning. Plus, she's a goofy foot. I won't pick her in Tier C, but I like her surfing and approach. Now let's talk about the wild cards. Vahine and Carissa are probably the most dangerous wild cards we've ever seen. In the opening round, they will face those in Tier A. Vahine against Katie and Tyler, while Carissa has Joanne and Betty Lou. They will then be reseeded against the highest ranked surfers, so it's going to be a hard road. Speaking of hard road, Sawyer will face Molly and Caroline. Ouch. Can they win? Of course. But will they? I think it depends on the surf. Big pumping surf favors Vahine, although Katie can play that game too. Vahine was in the semis the last 2 Tahiti Pro events. Is it lame to call her the Moana of Teahupoo? Yeah, kind of. They are different surfers, but have commonality in their local status and experience of their respective home breaks. Vahine, however, has more competitive experience and is currently in the top 10 on the CS. Her heat IQ, as Kaipa would say, is high. I'm going to give Vahine the mermaid badge for Queen of the Break. Carissa has been training at Tahiti and will be ready. As the 5-time champ, she is the sharpest competitor in the draw, but her last 2 showings weren't her best moments. That's the WSL Finals loss to Caroline and an elimination loss at the recent Pipe Pro. I would love to see her regain confidence and have a solid showing for the CT, setting her up for another gold medal. Tell me your women's fantasy radar selections. Pick 3 surfers and match them with the top pick emoji, the dark horse emoji, and the hard pass emoji. Put it in the comments and I'll randomly choose one of you to win a t-shirt from CARVE.SURF. That moves us to men's Tier A, where we get 2 selections. Because of COVID cancellations, we only have 2 years of recent stats to use for analysis. In those 2 years, Griffin Colapinto has lost in the round of 32 both times, or as we say in the Survival League, he did not survive. And I find it strange that the current number 1 in the world has not gone further in the brackets based on his skill level. I think the yellow jersey is due. Number 2 in the world, Jack Robinson, won last year's Tahiti event. He's coming off a victory in WA, and the last time he won at Margaret's in 2022, he followed up with a win in the next event at G-Land. If you believe in trends or magic, he may be your power surfer. Winning back-to-back events in the same year and the same event in back-to-back years is very rare, and I can't remember when it last happened. Maybe someone can jump in the comments and help me out. John Florence should probably be on your fantasy team, especially if it's large. He has experience, tube knowledge, and he's got to be hungry for a win after being runner-up twice this year at Pipe de Baron Mamiya and most recently in WA against Jack. Did you know his last win was all the way back in 2021 at the Pipe Masters? Now, you could make an argument for Ethan, Jordy, and Jake, but I think you already have your hands full trying to decide between the top 3. If you're into taking risks, though, Jordy and Jake have solid results this season and both have no problem going over the ledge. Ethan Ewing, who's probably a better pick if turns are on offer, broke his back here last year in the pre-event warm-up. None of these three have made it past a round of 32 in the last 2 Tahiti Pro events. In men's Tier B, we only get 4 picks, and I think I need 8. Baron Mamiya stands out with a semis result last year in Tahiti and a pipe win this year. He's custom made for this joint. Speaking of pipe chargers, Seth Moniz is going to receive my coming in hot badge after qualifying in Margaret's with a gutty performance. His coach Doug Silva, seen here in a fluorescent O'Neill ad with pods, is an eccentric 80s party hero that still surfs like it's 1999, and he sparked something in Moniz that has me believing again. Please read the interview with Doug Silva on Stab. I promise you will be entertained. Like Baron, Leo was also in the semis last year in Teahupoo. When it's heavy, Leo steps up. I like him here, but there's others to consider. Journeyman Kanoe Garashi and Elo Ferreira are always a threat, but neither have had substantial results in Tahiti. Last year was Liam O'Brien and Ryan Cownan's first Tahiti Pro event. The Aussie threat in Tier B is real. Both of them have the courage to tackle heaving Teahupoo, and Liam has some momentum coming into Tahiti. These are sound picks, especially if you're looking to break away from the pack. The outliers Cole, Imai, and Ramsey have never surfed in the Tahiti Pro, but all have tremendous potential here. Imai has pipe experience and was in the Pipe Pro quarters this year, and goofy footers Cole and Ramsey have been surprising us all season. I've already seen some outstanding clips of Cole who showed up early. Oh, and I nearly forgot about his 2% teammate, Crosby Colapinto. Using his big wave antics in Hawaii as a reference, he certainly qualifies. But like others in this group, it's his first time competing at the end of the road. Unfortunately, I have to give Rio my hard pass card. I mean, he could do well, and he has the heart of a lion, but when compared to the other players here, I wouldn't put him on my team. In Tier C is where you'll find my top pick, Gabriel Medina. Since 2014, when he won his first championship in Tahiti, Medina has been in the finals every time he's competed at Teahupoo, except for 2016 when he lost in the semis to John John. To say it another way, Medina has 6 finals appearances, including last year against Jack Robinson. It was hard not to notice in that event that Medina was completely in sync with difficult conditions, and he had Jack comboed until Robinson came back with 2 solid scores. If Gabriel Medina has an Achilles heel, it's losing at the end of heats because of either a lack of focus or being too overconfident, or as a recent Stab article surmised, judges giving buzzer beaters against him higher scores. You can see in the graph that Medina has lost to last-minute heroics more than anyone else. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. My next badge will go to Yago Dora as a stat nerd dark horse. Yeah, I don't immediately think of Yago as a Teahupoo standout, but the numbers don't lie. He's third in my power rankings behind Jack and Gabby and made the quarters at Teahupoo the last 2 years. Next is Connor O'Leary, who has surprisingly struggled in Tahiti, and Matthew McGillivray, who slip-slided into a 10-point ride a few years back, and I can't forget it. That leaves Kelly Slater, the all-time, maybe past his prime, 5-time Tahiti winner. Now, wait, didn't he get carried up the beach and retire in WA? If you listen closely to his post-heat interview, he was keen to get Griffin back for beating him, and there was that competitive twinkle in his eye. Next thing you know, he's in a CS heat at Snapper, and the WSL announces he'll be at Teahupoo and Fiji. Kelly can win here if the surf is like 2014, and how good would it be to see him actually retire with a win? Yeah, not going to happen, and I'm not going to bet on it. You'll have to see who I pick in the live show this Sunday, May 19th, 1:30 PST, also known as Los Angeles time. Well, my survival season finally came to an end. No cash and prizes for me. Am I upset at Matthew McGillivray for losing in his round of 32 heat to Ramsey? Well, I wasn't until I saw this. Dude was doing the pub tour in WA. The young me is proud of him, and the fantasy selection part of me is not mad, but disappointed, as only an old surf dad can be. I had it all worked out, too. I was saving Gabriel Medina for Teahupoo. Don't worry, I still put together the survival rates on my website that shows each surfer's past performance in the round of 32. But it doesn't let you know if your survival pick was in the pub the night before. Next up is El Salvador, and I'll be covering the event starting June 1st with video of the CT Surfers warm-up sessions, some interviews, and more. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that coverage. Hey everyone, thanks for watching, and now your moment of Stoke.
The locals are the most kind and respectful and respected locals that I've ever seen anywhere. Now, I know that in other parts of Tahiti, the localism is quite fierce. My understanding from just the local people I've talked to is that Ray Mana was a big part of trying to create a culture at Teahupoo specifically, which was friendly to foreign surfers. I know that particularly in recent years, on the small tow days, it's got totally packed out with people who are trying to get that photo of them in that one towable wave at Teahupoo. I haven't surfed it on those days. The days that I really enjoy are sort of the medium-sized paddle days, you know. And on those days, it's just the most fun place to surf that I've ever been, honestly, because a lot of those locals, they're pretty relaxed about those days and getting waves. You don't tend to get a lot of intermediate surfers going there to surf it because it's Teahupoo. So you can actually have like head to 1.5 times overhead, really fun barrels all day long. And I had the experience the first time I went there of Matehei Drole and another guy called Mateheu, who I'm probably saying his name wrong, the second guy. But I remember sitting out in the water and they paddled over, and there's probably like 10 guys sitting in the water, and they paddled over and said hello to everyone, like, hi, I'm Matehei, how's it going? You know, and then they paddle up to where they want to sit. And then they didn't take all the waves they could, but they would certainly take the best ones. And I just, you know, I've surfed in a lot of places around the world and dealt with a lot of locals and non-locals who like to think of themselves as the big dog, you know, barking at everyone and taking everything they can, which is not how I think priority should work. And I thought those guys, in particular Matehei, were just a perfect role model of how locals should behave to be absolutely respected and gracious at the same time. Yeah, so I think it's a very special place. Now that may change, of course, in future as it gets busier. I imagine enough pressure changes any situation, but that's been my experience there. Really magical.